So very good day to all our viewers and listeners, and we have Lara here today.
Hello.
And Lara, it has been a while since our recording, right? We have been working on some old recording due to technical problem, but now hopefully they're all back online. So we thought we are doing, just some discussion on recent affairs and I think when we're talking about what to do, and now around April time, this is a US presidential year, and there's a lot of news cycle that's happening. And I think sometimes people ask why we do the American coverage, and we always have this kind of, I guess it's an feeling, right, that a lot of what happens in America are applicable in Malaysia.
Yeah, that's totally true. But also, I guess this year we are focusing a lot on the United States. It's also because never before in history we have so many countries that are going into election. In this particular year, I mean, in just 1 year, you're seeing like half the world population is having to elect. And when you think about the wonders of United States, the democracy, I think they are the pioneer in democracy. I think that is what makes it so interesting.
And that's one of the things a lot of people don't quite understand when they went into the Republican system. And by the way, it's not really pure popular vote democracy. Yes, everyone can vote, but how you choose the president at the end of the day is a very special electoral college system. But the most interesting thing about the American experiment, some would like to call it, is really the fact the government is trying to give back the power, because that was what the founding fathers were trying to fight. They were fighting British. By the way, most of them were from Great Britain.
Yep.
And so that was a legacy. But then we come into today, right, modern world, you start to hear the word progressive. I don't know if you've been listening to our show, you know how we look at that word progressive or liberal and leftist. It seems like progressive is no longer a very attractive word, right?
No, I think it has become so common that it's somewhat misused as well. That people don't realize that, hey, actually progressive means that there are certain thinking of yours that are a bit more leaning towards really, I guess, literally, I mean, it's a different kind of word for liberal.
Yeah, and these days, I think when you talk about progressive, we are not talking about in general, we are advancing to a better system. When you look at the English common law, for example, when they progress into equity, that's really a superior and a more fair legal system. But today, when you look at progressive, it's not like that, because you look at some of the things that, progressive means you have to allow your child to have the power to change their gender and things like that. I was just talking to one of my friends, who, by the way, he's working in Australia and his wife is expecting in KL. And they already decided the child is not going to go to school in Australia because of all these progressive elements. They made a very conscious decision. So it's very interesting because people don't want, we don't want the free will to be trampled, right? And that's another theme for this season. We really want to focus on decentralization and the ability to pursue happiness.
Yep.
So one of the things that we've been saying is because, I'm just making a note here, the more we say we are progressive, it seems that we're becoming more regressive. Just look at the political news. And so one of the things in this US election cycle, of course, you can't talk about US election without talking about the person, right? You have Joe Biden having a rematch with Donald Trump. And most people who are not very familiar with the American system or news cycle, they will ask me, so is Trump in legal jeopardy? Is he in deep trouble? Is he going to prison? And because that's the kind of impression you get from reading mainstream media, right? And remember a couple of weeks ago, we recorded quite a while ago, but maybe just recently published, we talk about the bias.
Yep.
And so that's the thing that we want to talk about, because really what we're seeing, and I think we set the tone first, then we're going to discuss the detail. What we're seeing right now is you have the incumbent president, Joe Biden, using all the apparatus available to him, the DOJ, the state district attorney, mainstream media, big tech. He is using everything he could to limit his opponent. And in Australia, we used to have this expression. It's called fair dinkum. I don't know if you heard before. I'm sure British have their own version. So fair dinkum basically means we can fight, but it has to be fair. So a bit like in Malaysia, we have the lawang tetap lawang kind of thing.
Yep.
But I mean, when you look at what's happening here, and the term we use is lawfare, right? And some people call it weaponization. So what comes to your mind when you look at that? Because that is what is happening to Donald Trump and his supporter right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess you can't really separate. I mean, you can't unthink the two words when you put it together, as in law and warfare.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's literally what caused it to. I mean, why people are coining the two terms together. Lawfare.
It is war, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a sort of war, but what exactly? I mean, as in like you are literally using the whole machinery of legal system. I mean, as in like everything is legalized, and yet you're using it to dominate over another person that you simply don't favor. I think that's exactly what is happening to President Trump. And because some people, even the mainstream media, some were questioning, like Joe Biden, are you using your influence from White House to cause, because the DOJ or the state district attorney, they're supposed to be different from the presidential office. So of course he denied again and again, but more and more evidence are coming out that there was direct instruction. And what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to limit Donald Trump's ability to campaign. And I think one of the things that really caught the Democrat by surprise was the swiftness of which Donald Trump secured his nomination within the Republican Party. I think both of us were a bit surprised that DeSantis wasn't able to put out a better fight. Yeah.
By January, right, it was wrapped. Never before.
Yep.
So I think, and do you see that when he was having success in nomination, when his numbers are going up, then the lawfare began. So there is a direct correlation there. And kind of remind me of Malaysia, right? We do have this kind of lawfare, right? Remember when the then Pakatan Rakyat were making ground? Remember one general election, Pakatan Rakyat, of course, those days we passed, actually have more popular votes.
Yep.
And the next cycle before the next general election, Sodomy 2 came. And I still remember Prime Minister Najib at that time, he denied that. He said, well, Attorney General have their own discretion. I mean, who believes you, right? So in Malaysia, we kind of understood this kind of lawfare. Of course, Anwar being the most prominent one. And even going back a little bit, I was reading about Mahathir. And Mahathir is really the classic denier, because people ask him about what's the thing already? The ISA thing, all the events. Then he'll be like, well, emergencies. And when it comes to emergency, he will say it's the Agong who did it.
Yep.
And when it comes to ISA, he will blame the police. So it's everyone's fault except him. But I was reading that he actually had an attorney general who carry out all the tasks, because attorney general is the one who decides the charge. They could decide the ISA and things like that. So would you say that when it comes to lawfare, Malaysian probably could identify with it quite well?
I think most definitely. I mean, it is in the history of Malaysia. I mean, even at the very beginning of the formation of Malaysia, you have a lot of times, I think it all started off from, hey, just a little bit, let's have emergency proclamation. I think because of that and how the politicians have seen that Malaysians are so easily being influenced, whether we like it or not. And therefore, I mean, lawfare just becomes something that is so commonly, I mean, just a slightest bit of opposition, then you have this sort of things that is happening in Malaysia.
I sort of remember, 2009 or 2010, we have the Cebu by-election, the time the by-election of the century.
2010, I think.
2010, right? And remember one of the issue very hot at that time was the Allah issue, because the indigenous in Sabah and Sarawak, their scripture, they use the word Allah. So they were like, hey, you guys from Semenanjung, you can't tell us you can't use that. So we can't use that. So the Catholic Church was actually at the forefront of all this challenge. So some of the politicians, of course, kind of mentioned this. And I remember during campaign period, then the IGP at that time, I can't remember his name, he started to say, well, anyone who stir up the Allah issue potentially could be detained under ISA. So that was it. And it's really, that is like a warning or lawfare, I guess, a threat. And I remember one of the person, there were many people coming to help to campaign for the DAP candidate. And some of and we managed to meet some of the people in the politics, and they were just saying that, people are intimidated by the threat of ISA. And some were like, I hope I don't get detained, those kind of things, because it's a reality in this nation. Now, even though ISA has sort of been abolished, right? But you still have SOSMA, you still have, when I know we want to kind of talk about the American context, which we'll go back again because so much to learn there. But I look at the local context, it's really, our laws really, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but when I look at so many types of charges that you can be charged without bail, and even if you're not guilty, but you'll be detained for 4 or 5 years. And that's assuming you can afford hundreds of thousands of legal fees. So would you agree that, we are, maybe the government is, the scale of balance is so tipped towards their hand? They have so much power.
Yes, for sure. I mean, even if you look at even construction contracts, public works contract, it's so much more favorable to the government than even the contractors. So I think you're like, are you favoring the people more, or are you actually favoring the machinery more? I think that's like really the sort of question that we need to begin to think. But I think because since the formation of Malaysia, we have always been more of a big brother sort of mentality, big government, big setup, big establishment. So they do need some form of, whether or not we like it, like a security, a guarantee that they will always be on the winning side. So although they say that we are being voted in by the people, really I think the mindset is more like, I would say it's very selfish sort of mindset, because they wanted to protect the cronies, the ones that are really like direct beneficiary of all these things.
Yeah. So I think we can all agree that lawfare, in Malaysia, in many quote-unquote third world country, those like, maybe a better word is emerging democracy. Our democracy is not quite mature yet. We don't have quite a balanced rule of law. So, but when you think about Britain, when you think about Australia, when you think about America, you think they have a more established democracy, and yet right now we are seeing a reversal of the so-called progressiveness. So with that, let's come back to Donald Trump, because a few things that really is very interesting, because he became the first president ever in our 200 plus histories to be charged with a criminal charge. That has never happened before. So of course, I mean, if you've been following the news, so many things, right? He had the election interference case in Georgia, and now some of his allies were charged with election interference. I mean, election interference is so funny, right? If the other side is winning, it is your job to challenge it until you exhaust all possible manner. And they talk about when Al Gore lost to George Bush, he challenged all the way.
Yeah.
And then the other time, one senator in, I can't remember which state already, they lost, and they continue to challenge. So the Democrats have been doing that. The Democrats have been doing what they accused Donald Trump of doing. But back to Trump, he has been charged with the Georgia case, Arizona case, the classified document case, the hush money case in New York now, which is basically, when you look at the whole saga, it is trying to kind of prevent him from campaigning. Then, of course, talking about the forfeiture of his building in New York, which is a super ridiculous case. We don't have time to go into that. But just look at the number of cases that he's facing. His name was taken out from Colorado ballot. And it went all the way to Supreme Court, and Colorado State was smacked with a 7-0 ruling by even the liberal justices couldn't tahan this kind of lawfare. So really, I think one of the things that if you are following this for the first time, I want you to know that this is unprecedented and it's going to create a lot of things. Now let's talk about a case that is somewhat related. Because while all these things is happening, Trump began to go all the way to Supreme Court and ask the questions, is there immunity for president? Because president is not like our Argon. President is not like king or queen of England. President is a chief executive. So in a corporate world, they are really like executive chairman. Actually, even more than that, because they can override the shareholders pretty easily, okay? And this is what Trump posted in his social media, Truth Social, just a few days ago. And he said, without presidential immunity, it will be impossible for a president to properly function, putting the United States of America in great and everlasting danger. So anyway, that was the question that was being asked. And it's very interesting because if you go to Supreme Court, the justices will kind of allocate a few minutes, depending on the complexity of the case, having some oral discussion. So, keen observer of the court, usually they will look at those exchange and begin to kind of predict. Of course, you can never predict the court, right? But you can kind of make a feeling how you think it will lean. I remember the reversal of Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
They say weeks before that it will be reversed, and it was reversed. So anyway, the justices start to ask some very interesting questions, and one of the most interesting by Justice Gorsuch is he asked the U.S. government, because U.S. government is the one who the DOJ, and he said, well, President Obama did order drone strike and it killed civilian, so could he be charged? And there was a going back and forth. The government said cannot. And Gorsuch is playing devil's advocate and say, why not? Why not? Basically, you tell me what's the difference. So I find it interesting because how can the chief executive be liable? And the government reasoning is, you have a lot of legal advice and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most ridiculous advice that I've actually heard, because they mentioned that you have all at it's literally, the legal advice is literally at your expense, and hence you should be able to make a very informed decision. Hence, you shouldn't be having this sort of immunity, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and then of course, and they continue. So the Supreme Court justices, they continue to ask the question, well, if there's no immunity, if presidents are subject to criminal prosecution for anything, now, mind you, we're not talking about things happen after they left office. We're talking strictly about the things that happened during office. Everything they charge Donald Trump are the things he did during office. There's a great distinction there. Because if you left office and you committed a crime, I think it's a very clear-cut argument. But while you are in office, I mean, ambassadors have immunity, right? When they go to other country, you can't easily prosecute, especially when they are high-level diplomat, let alone a chief executive of a country.
Yep.
That is so ridiculous. But anyway, they ask this thing. They say, well, if the president could be charged, well, are you not creating open season? It's like once the president kind of leave, you can charge. And this is what we see in nation like Korea, for example. Yeah. South Korea, every president, after a few years,
must be charged.
I think, I don't know, I didn't count, but most of them go to prison, right?
Yeah.
It's like, then who wants to be, and Taiwan is kind of having that pattern. And that's why, like, is Malaysia heading that direction? So Najib kind of set a precedent. So when Anwar steps down, if it's a different government, are they going to charge him?
Hard to tell.
So in a way, 1NDB opened a new floodgate. Of course, he has been found I mean, over a period of 8 years, so you can say that he has been given due process. But I mean, if people argue that you are creating an open season, I mean, you can understand where they're coming from, right? Because Prime Minister should have the ultimate power. I mean, I use the word should.
Well, I guess also because in Malaysia it's slightly different because like the Prime Minister is also the Minister of Finance. So I think it's very much, I will argue that it's quite different from President of United States, for instance, because they have their own, I mean, obviously the executive order comes from the president. But the thing is, it's almost like there's a distinctive role that every other branches of the government play. But whereas in Malaysia, there is just a lot of merging roles that literally, I mean, if you're not careful, if you don't have righteousness, literally you can just be so easily tempted.
Yeah, because over the years, the Prime Minister office really become like a super centralized power structure. And we were just saying, right, that the PMO in Malaysia is actually more powerful than Politburo in CCP China. And that's the truth. But I guess the only mistake that Prime Minister Najib did was for the money to come into his personal account. Anything short of that, I think there's no case against him.
Yep.
I mean, if he say the Ministry of Finance sign a guarantee, give to a third-party company, pay them for some consultancy fee for a few billion, I don't think it may challenge, man, because the MOF is the treasury, right? They can do whatever they want. But when you took it for yourself, well, that's a screw up. But anyway, so it's very interesting that they were seeing that, and of course Trump is now. Of course, Trump is also one of the charge is that election interference. Now, of course, we saw that in Georgia and Arizona, and they go back to January 2020 when they say that he tried to create insurrection. And by the way, the Democrat controlled Congress at that time did an inquiry, and the DOJ charged many people. So this is what we call the J6 incident. And very interesting that, of course, we read about it. We I wasn't really doing a lot of research on that. But of course, Tucker Carlson released the video, and then before he was terminated from Fox. And then I think Speaker Mike Johnson also released. But people kind of, that's one of the things about justice in political system. When it is kind of, when the heat of the moment, the popularity of the moment is gone, people don't care about justice anymore, right? They only care about the moment. So a lot of people don't care about J6. But one of the things that is happening right now is some of the defendants appeal all the way to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court is listening, because what happened is a lot of them are charged with what is called obstruction of official proceeding. And I was very surprised because when I read the history, how this charge came about was during Enron. So Enron was a huge financial fraud collapse of one of the biggest energy company in US.
Yep.
So when they were being investigated, the CFO, the official, everyone, the financial, the auditor, and Enron was so bad that Arthur Anderson, the audit firm, had to be closed down. One of those days, Big Five. And so this thing, the law was created so that people cannot destroy evidence. And that's why this charge carries sentence up to 20 years in prison. So they are charging J6 people. What do J6 people do? They walk around and suddenly, people open the door for them to go into the Capitol Hill. They go in. So what is the obstruction that you're talking about? So the prosecutor said, well, the obstruction is you are stopping the certifications of US presidential election by the Electoral College because you are interfering with the hearing, because the Congress heard about people coming in and they got scared and they cannot vote. So imagine this, Lyra, let's say someone come to you and say, well, this is a 20-year charge. You go to trial, if you're found guilty, the judge can send you to prison 20 years. But I'm giving you a deal now. If you plead guilty, we will set the limit to 5 years. And you can imagine the emotion at that time, right? I mean, even if you're not guilty, you will plead guilty.
Yep.
And so a lot of them get between 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years for this, And so finally some of them fed up and they appealed away. And the Supreme Court seems to think that this charge is a bit baloney lah. So this is another clear example of lawfare, right?
Yep.
That you are just, you know what, it's really, they are going after everything which is linked with Trump because they just couldn't stand that he's coming in and destroy, I don't know, they think they have some kind of institution. And kind of remind me that, you see, Trump in his first term, you could say that he was still a political rookie because remember what happened with his opponent? Hillary Clinton actually committed a crime with her server kind of thing. But it has always been this way, right? Fair dinkum, we say, the Australian. So we have fight already, lawan. So at the end already, okay lah, your government, okay lah, we're not going to be too calculated. So that's why he did. And saying that, okay, I'm not going to, Hillary will not be, in fact, he went on record and said Hillary will not be charged.
Yep.
But you see, just because you play by tradition, the other side is not playing by tradition. And so we are seeing such just tremendous lawfare. But what do you think? I mean, it's like, is it, and all this, okay, just one more observation that I want to hear your reaction because all the lawfare seems to push his rating higher and higher and higher. Why do you think so?
Well, I think because truth will cause people to really just see through. Literally, I mean, when they see that everything, because I think a lot of people could tell. I mean, because just even based on the polling, that it's really because his popularity really just kind of keep on going up and up and up. And so much so that even a lot of the Democrats, they are really seeing through the lies of the Democrat politician. I think that's what is really, really driving the popularity of Trump. And they are seeing that, hey, this is a person that is really just being unfairly charged against all this thing. And I guess people are feeling sympathetic even.
I was just reading the news today. I can't remember which news I'm just trying to find. And they were saying that majority of voters on both sides, they were saying that if Trump is convicted, it won't change the way they vote. So, but we have seen the poll. It's like, so he's opening out almost a double digit in Arizona. That's why now they decided to charge Trump's ally, with the same election interference kind of thing. And that's just, I mean, here, for example, if you lose, if the election result come back, you lose by 50 votes, 100 votes, are you going to demand a recount? Are you going to check, is the Salaran correct? Are you marking it correct? Did anyone's, will anyone just left alone with the, you think about all possibility, you think about all the things, right, that is happening.
I mean, that's so common in Malaysia.
And it's like even in university, remember those days, I don't know if your university allowed that. You get result back. If you're not happy, you can actually pay, I don't know, $50 or whatever. Then they will show you your exam paper. And then sometimes some university even allow the paper to be marked by another similar qualified lecturer. And sometimes the result is overturned, of course, very rarely, because the university doesn't want to punch their own face, right?
Yep.
But you know what I mean or not? So that's very interesting. Now let's talk about the final thing, because this lawfare really is a wide topic, but we also see the manifestation of lawfare in cancel culture, right? And so I know one of the things that I read recently is this swimmer called Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines is an NCAA state level swimmer, and when a male transgender was allowed to compete with the female, and he kind of swept all the medal.
Thomas Leah.
Yeah.
Thomas.
Leah, not call him Thomas, right? Yeah. I think is it like Leah? Did he change his name to Leah?
I have no idea. I think he did.
So if transgender, you're going to call them by their original gender, right?
Yeah, of course. He's a man.
Yeah. So anyway, she became sort of like an activist. Activist for female. And it's interesting that Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner. He used to be a Olympic gold medalist, become a transgender, and he came out strongly against transgender competing in female category. He himself is a transgender, and he came out because he knew it's not fair. And so anyway, the whole story was Riley continued to try to present the point of view to protect female, and then she wanted to do an event at one of the university through Eventbrite, and Eventbrite just unilaterally canceled her event. And later they said, well, it's because she breached the terms or conditions. But Senator Ted Cruz recently did an investigation, a Senate inquiry into the whole thing, and he said there is evidence that Eventbrite canceled it because it doesn't match with their left-wing ideology. So imagine this: service provider can terminate you because they don't like who you are. So can TNB stop providing electricity because you are not Islamic enough, you are not Malay enough? I don't know what is the category, right?
You don't support Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. Can you do that? And of course, we saw big tech do that very often. Even in COVID era, I remember, even today, right? If you do like some of our recording, sometimes you get tagged. We haven't been talking COVID for a while, but these days, even if you talk about health kind of thing, they will put, be warned. These people are not experts. Be warned. Their opinion are not the same. So I'm just thinking, I think they haven't caught up to the Bitcoin kind of thing. And I was just reading the other day, and somebody was just saying, look, in this kind of lawfare situation, when government is saying that be careful of gold, be careful of Bitcoin, then it sort of have a reverse effect, right? If government say these are not, like recently Bursa Malaysia doesn't want to acknowledge Bitcoin as a tradable asset, but somebody was saying that it's just going to have a reverse effect. People will feel more like, I can't really trust establishment. And that's really the reality of progressiveness today, right?
Yep.
And what about the other case, Nigel Farage?
Yeah, so interesting.
He is anti-Euro. He is pro-Brexit. And his bank account was unilaterally shut down.
Yeah, exactly. How can you literally just cause a person to become a non-person when you shut down the bank? Because how are you going to have all this banking system that is at work? It's almost like the whole regime is really going after you. It's literally I don't know. I think it's really because the banking industry is really just so against his philosophy of pro-Brexit.
So we kind of see, we call them very loosely the globalists, right? They are like, they like to call themselves progressive, but they are really, they're against conservative, they're against family value, they're pro-Palestine. You kind of see a trend. And
yeah, that just sort of remind me, as in because a lot of times people are thinking, hey, but I'm first a nationalist. But really, if you think about the nationalism, the way you equate nationalism with race, aren't you a racist?
Exactly.
You're not a nationalist at all.
And that's why when people talk about Hitler being a nationalist, he is not a nationalist, he is a racist, because he promoted the Iron Race. And of course, he started off as a nationalist, like Mussolini would be closer to that. But when you promote a certain superiority, and that's the whole thing that the whole civil rights movement in America have been hijacked. The people of color, I know some people are not going to like it, but it's a reality. And race have been hijacked all around the world for a particular agenda.
Yeah, they like to play the victim card, and when in fact they are the victimizer.
Yeah, exactly, and this is really, this is really the hallmark of progressiveness, unfortunately, today. And now, of course, you talk about the big tech, you talk about the bank, Eventbrite, they will say, well, we are private entity. We are fair, we are free to do whatever we want. But here's the thing, you are free to do whatever you want, but you are not free to contradict freedom of expression, especially when such a right is enshrined. Now, of course, if you talk about Malaysia, yeah, we don't really have the same level. But in US, in many places, they have the freedom of expression is enshrined in their constitution and even many case law. So if that's the case, then, and that's why somebody was saying, you know, how do we deal with the censorship of big tech, you know, like you, in fact, it goes both way, right? Recently, do you read the news about the stabbing in a I think Greek Orthodox or Catholic church, Orthodox church, right?
Yeah.
And then so it was live streamed some more, so a lot of people caught the video. So when people do memes and put in social media, the Australian government wants the whole thing to be taken down. So I think Meta, Facebook, Insta, okay lah, we will take it down for Australia because you don't like it, we won't show it in your country. But you as a country don't have the right to censor the whole world.
Yep.
So, but of course, if you put in US server, you put in New Zealand server, people with VPN can still watch, right? So this goes to the whole thing, you know, who can determine censorship? Because a lot of censorship has been done by big tech. And people are saying that, look, in that case, we should treat big tech like utilities. Because no matter how much disagreement we have, even our government will not shut down our electricity and water, right? Not yet. But I'm just thinking, you know, for people who are so supportive of EV, that's one of the things the government can do with EV. They can just shut you down.
Yep.
Because what EV will lead to self-driving. Self-driving will lead to bigger government. You know, it sounds like we are against all these things, but we're just pointing out that when you give more centralized power, the potential for abuse is great. That's why I always use the example of Singapore. Yes, so far, you don't have a very evil leader. But the moment you have a very evil leader, it is so easy to shut down the society there. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying that when that happens, the day come when they don't like you, like I don't know if you heard about China, for example. In a city like Shenzhen, you hardly could use cash.
Yeah.
So you can only use those QR payment. And do you know that at some point when you want to update your QR payment, they ask for your employment history. They ask for your data. If you don't want to give, then they will say you can't use WeChat because it is a violation of our terms of service. But of course with China, I don't find it surprisingly because they are all about oppressive. But when this happens in US, I guess the lesson for us is if it can happen in US, it's going to happen worldwide.
Yep.
We already say we are kind of used to lawfare in Malaysia. But if it can happen to someone like Trump, a billionaire, already a nominee for Republican Party, and Republican Party is not insignificant. They have powerful people, and yet they still dare to do this kind of thing. What do you think they can do to ordinary people like you and me?
Anything else?
Yeah, so I guess it's I mean we just want to discuss this, just kind of, you know, think about this. We are really in a different era, but I'm really interested to see, you know, what kind of relief will come. Supreme Court seems to indicate that they are a bit fed up with all this kind of thing. And when faced with, okay, maybe we finish with this, Lara. So what would you say, you know, like if faced with lawfare, you know, because we already say Malaysia, we do have it. I don't know, do you sometimes get concerned about, you know, the things we say here? Is someone going to knock at us and say...
I've not thought about it before.
You haven't not thought about it, yeah. But sometimes I think about it, but of course we are like kind of under the radar. But you know, anyone at you know, Malaysia with the Atas Sakit Hati reading episode there. So if you step on the wrong toe, you know, you kind of just offended someone. I guess that's the tools are there for people to use. But what would you say? I mean, at the personal level, even at the corporate level, what can be done to mitigate this?
Well, I guess, aside from the continual education, really just educate yourself about all these sort of things. It's really, I guess there is a movement of the people, as in like the grassroots movement. So I do believe in the power of grassroots movement because that's where, I mean, you even begin to see like UMNO, that's how they gain like certain, like really the popularity and even support from really, because they were the sort of person, I mean, obviously before corruption and things like that, they really do like go down to the field to really just get the support from the grassroots. I think you could kind of, I guess you can be shrewd and really just use the same sort of tactic against big government. So if you can gather enough support, I mean, like what Kerry Lake is doing, it's not like just sort of like a once off when you're defeated and that's it. So you continue the momentum, but you continue to gain more. I guess that's how the Tea Party is really, that is causing Trump to be so popular. And he really see through this whole thing and really like knowing how to pitch the whole idea of putting America first to a group of people who really, really just believe in that sort of ideology. So I guess I do believe in the voice. If you don't allow your voice to be silenced, that there's a way for the citizens, journalists to really, really just mushroom, and eventually, I think even the media can't overtake you.
Yeah. I mean, what you shared just reminded me of what's happening in our. I stay in Old Canberra area, and there's a lot of developments, and just massive over development by DBKL, and so every time there's a project approved and things like that, some local community will get together, they will scrutinize the plan, they will try to see if there's any way they can just hassle. Now, of course, nobody, I mean, what we saw, for example, in Taman Kimbara, in what's the place, Hanayo's constituent, Segambut there. So where they actually won a court case, it's very, very rare, but my Taman here and some of the Taman, we start to see people, they take certain action, they email, they attend the meeting, they make complaint, and they make things difficult. And it's like whatever you can do at your level. And at government school, they are not happy. They use a PIBG, try to. Now, of course, government school will be hard. Semi-government school maybe a bit better. Private school, you have even, private school, the principal will be scared of threats or legal letter and things like that. So whatever you have, whatever leverage you have. And I mean, even, we talk about, what's the thing, Padu, and when people are not satisfied with the thing, so you look at the registration, it's still very low. That's ways of protesting. Kuala Kubu elections.
I mean, if they can cancel you, why not? I mean, you can also cancel them out.
Yeah, somebody was saying that for us, the ultimate cancellation is really election. But oftentimes, when it comes to election, people don't have the courage to do something really crazy. But from time to time, we see that Malaysians do have the courage. March 2008, for example. So maybe it can happen again, but you have to start somewhere, right? Otherwise, there won't be the momentum.
Yeah, you kind of have to practice until you get the boldness.
Yeah. And just start at O level. We were not saying that, people can do what Trump is doing. It's very, very tough. But at personal level, if we want a better future, we do have to fight for it.
Yep, that's right.
So I think that's all the time we have for today. It's very interesting discussion, and maybe, the next few episodes, want to just talk about it because the practicality is challenging, right? I mean, we don't deny that at all. But maybe we can get some different perspective and see.
Sure, that would be fun.
All right, so that's all we have for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.